property is they don't give you the loan based off you. A lot of times they give you the loan based off the cash flow of the property, right? So that allowed me to start continuously buying more property and not be restricted by, my global debt service coverage ratio with, on the residential side.
Welcome, Real Estate Hustlers Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Appelman. Today we are joined with Andrew Freed. Was climbing the corporate ladder until he did the math on a 40-year retirement plan. He borrowed against his condo, and today he owns and manages around 500 units. Andrew, we appreciate you coming on the show. If you could let the listeners know a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. So my journey starts back, growing up. I was sold the American dream: get a good education, get a good job, get a fancy six-figure salary, get a condo in the city. Like I did it all, right? And by the end of my 30s, I felt empty. I felt like I had so much more potential to give. I felt like I was going down the wrong path. And ultimately, I could not see myself doing this for 30 to 40 more years. And I found this beautiful book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Opened my eyes to the power of financial freedom. And at that point, I realized that, there was a path outside of the rat race for working for 30, 40 more years to, living the dream life that you wanted to live. And real estate was that path. So at that point, I decided real estate was the way. I HELOC'd my one-bedroom condo for around $200,000, and I utilized that to start buying real estate. I started house hacking some multifamilies, owner-occupying some 3 or 4 units. Did that a couple times, partnered on a couple commercial units, figured out how to syndicate, how to joint venture, how to raise capital, and about 5 years later, I'm up to about 500 rental units.
All right, very cool. So let's go back to the very first deal. How you found it, the size, because the first deal is everything. That's experience, and that builds confidence.
Totally. Yeah, so my first deal was just a 3-unit in Worcester, Massachusetts. I didn't know what I was doing, so I found great like moving to multifamily. I was currently living in Boston. It was way outside my price range. But I decided to look in markets that were more affordable. Worcester, Massachusetts was the market that I decided. And that's when I decided to house hack that. So I got an FHA loan, a 3.5% down loan. And I utilized my HELOC money as the down payment to buy that property. It was a 3-unit in Worcester, Massachusetts for around $560,000. 2 of the units were vacant. I was going to live in the third. And once those units were rented out, it'd bring around $3,200 in revenue, and the mortgage was $3,200. So it made sense for me, and I kind of moved forward, and it's history from there.
It was $3,200 with the other 2 units leased up, and then you're basically living for free, and your mortgage is getting paid down by the other 2 tenants.
That's exactly correct. That when I move out, that third tenant would be my cash flow unit, right? So each unit brought around $1,600 at that time. Now I think rent's gone up to around $2,200 or so for that unit.
And then, of course, for the listeners, any units under 4 units is considered residential still, not commercial. So now you can utilize your 3.5% down payment. That's how you got qualified for was it Fannie Small, or it was actually FHA, where you can get your 3.5%.
Yeah, it was an FHA loan. They also have other loans out there, like a 5% down conventional loan that you can utilize. They even have 0% down first-time home buyer loans. VA loans, if you're a veteran, you can get into a house hack, a 3-unit or 4-unit with 0% down as well. So there's many owner-occupied units. My first house hack was an FHA, and then from there I started utilizing 5% down conventional loans for my house hack, because typically you max out, you can only have one FHA at a time. There's some rules around that, but typically that's the case.
The only thing with that is you can't close in an LLC. It's got to be tied to you personally. So there's some caveats to it.
That's exactly correct. Yes. But What I will say is, I live in Massachusetts, and owning an LLC in Massachusetts is very expensive. You're talking $500 annual fee. You're talking, $2,000 a month, annual fee to do your taxes. So it can get very expensive. So a lot of times for your first or second property, I just recommend doing it in your personal name. And if you are worried about liability, then you can simply get an umbrella policy on top of that.
Got it. Very cool. So you've got your first deal. You're living in there, and then first deal propels you to the second deal because it's working out. What does your second deal look like?
So I bought 150 Ingleside Avenue, and while I was just working, I was actually working from home at the time. It was right during COVID. My neighbor comes knocking on the door, and they were interested in selling 150 Ingleside Avenue, the 3-unit right across the road. I think he won around $450,000 for it. The current revenue equaled around $4,500. It hit the 1% rule. It made sense to me. And at that point, I still had about $150,000 on my line of credit. So, I thought, I might as well utilize this to buy my next property. So I bought that with a 20% down loan with my HELOC money.
Got it. And that's a HELOC, so it's not technically, because a lot of banks want to see your line of credit get paid, like balance paid in full at least within 12 months, and then you can utilize it again. But a HELOC, you can basically just pay on it for the life of the loan. Is that right?
That's exactly correct. And typically, when banks take that into account, they look at the max monthly payment. And the magical thing about HELOCs is they're typically interest only for the first 10 years, right? So when the bank's taking that payment into account, they're only taking the interest payment into account and not the principal, allowing you to leverage it that much farther to utilize for down payments on properties.
Good deal. Awesome. So you're into multifamily residential. What made you want to get into a larger multifamily, into the commercial side?
So I'm still in multifamily. I just went from to 5+ units, the commercial side, as you mentioned. I think it all comes down to the fact that, like, at a certain point, you get maxed out on your debt service coverage ratio globally. And I was at that case. I had probably 3, 4, 5 properties in my personal name. At that point, I scaled so quickly that the revenue behind it didn't scale as quickly with me. It didn't show my tax returns. It takes a couple years to do that. So as time went on, I looked weaker and weaker and weaker to lenders. But the magical thing about commercial property is they don't give you the loan based off you. A lot of times they give you the loan based off the cash flow of the property, right? So that allowed me to start continuously buying more property and not be restricted by, my global debt service coverage ratio with, on the residential side.
That's huge. So what led you to, what was your next biggest deal after when you started leveling up?
Yeah, so I think I utilized my HELOC, I utilized my 401k, utilized promissory notes. I got to about 30 units on my own with partners. So I had a couple multis, I had a couple 3 or 4 units, I had a couple 6+ unit properties. And at that point, I ran on my own cash, but I had all these amazing deals coming my way. And I ended up having a 70-unit portfolio in New Bedford, Massachusetts come my way. I think we got it for around $80,000 a door when doors in the area were trading for around $120,000 per unit. So there was definitely meat on the bone, but I didn't have the cash. That's when I kind of figured out how to raise money from investors and how to syndicate. When I first got into real estate, I got a mentor. He already owned a couple hundred units. He already syndicated a couple properties. So for that first deal, I ended up bringing him on board, and he kind of showed me the ropes. And I took down my first syndication in the form of a 70-unit portfolio in New Bedford, Massachusetts.
And what time period was this?
So that was around 2023. So
Okay.
I closed on my first multi December 2021, and come around 2023, that's when this portfolio came across my desk.
What
And
was
meanwhile, I was still working my W-2. I was an investor-focused agent. I was hosting the largest real estate meetup in Worcester. So at that point, I was very much doing a lot.
what was the structure like on your syndication, or what is it like?
Yep. So that's it was an 8-pref 50-50 split. So the first 8% return goes to investors, and everything after that is split 50-50. And we also had about 6 GPs on it as well.
That's a heavy syndication. It's 6 GPs that brought in investor capital plus the 8% pref. Do you all still have the deal?
We do still have the deal. We returned all of the capital. We've obtained around a 30% profit on that, and we have one property out of the portfolio left to sell. I think we started with 12 or 13 properties, so we just got one
Oh,
left.
nice. Okay, so you bought it, you managed it, and then you sold off the assets one by one?
That's exactly correct. The great thing about buying portfolios, especially if you negotiate a partial release clause with the bank, is you can sell off each individual asset in the portfolio and not sell off the portfolio as a whole. So that's exactly what we did. We identified, we essentially try to get the max price per unit by selling them off individually.
Got it. Very good. Yeah, so those LPs are happy. And then what does your deal flow look like today?
So currently, we own and operate on 500 rental units, and we're aiming to close around 100 to 150 doors this year in the form of portfolios, 20, 30, 40 unit portfolios, 5, 10, 15 unit properties. Typically, the stock in New England, which that's where we invest, all their type multis.
Got it. The biggest problem, or I guess the biggest thing that we're seeing, I'm in Cincinnati, is it's like a deadlock between owners owning the asset, brokers, and then the investors, me, who are actually willing to pay the price. Because owners want top the market price with unrenovated units. So basically wanting the property to be sold as if it's renovated.
Mm-hmm.
Owners and brokers are selling it as such, and owners are not, or investors are just not willing to put their time, effort, energy into something that doesn't make sense. So it's the deals are just it's like totally unbuyable inventory out there. I mean, what are you all? You all seem like you're still seeing things, but is it the same? Are you negotiating in a different way? What's the strategy?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, with the larger multifamily, there's a lot of competition. That's why I like to play in the space of like a 20 to, 50 or 60 unit type deal, because a lot of times there's not a lot of players playing in that sort of space. And there's not a lot of buyers in that space. So it allows you the ability to negotiate more with the seller. And then it also offers multiple exit strategies. As I mentioned with portfolios, you could refi the whole portfolio, you could sell the whole portfolio, you could sell certain pieces off. So that's kind of the strategy where we've been taking to negate this, is kind of buying portfolios, and targeting, asset classes that not a lot of multifamily investors are targeting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely we've got a scattered site portfolio, which I mean we own and manage too, and that's kind of the sandbox that we've played in. If it's a good deal, we'll move forward. If it's just where's the deal at? That's what we're
Hmm.
looking just looking for what's worth the time. Usually it's 2 to 3 years to get it all renovated, leased up correctly, get it restabilized and refinanced. So it's what are you willing to put your time into, and if everything matters on the buy price, you typically don't get paid for the 2 to 3 years that you're stabilizing it. So there's got to be an end meaning for all your effort. So it's
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say in our game, to your point, you make your money at the end. So it's definitely a long game for sure.
yeah. Yeah. So what do your operations look like? You're managing 500 units.
Mhm.
What does the team look like? Operations, tech stack, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. So we have around 30 employees, ranging. We have virtual assistants as well as local people as well, and we have a good amount of maintenance. So a lot of times, when it comes to making these assets perform, the key is keeping expenses in house and keeping them low. And that's what we've been aiming to do with getting maintenance, plumbing, and electrical in house. So we have about 7 or 8 maintenance techs, painters, um, things like that. We also have about probably 3 or 4 property managers, that handle the front line. We have some virtual assistants that take in communications that help lease the units. We have an array of leasing agents, and then we have a whole staff of back office people, including bookkeepers, accounts payable, controllers, and VAs to help manage all of the properties, the utilities, and things of that nature. So it is quite the comprehensive team. The manager scattered site portfolio is not, it's not for the faint of heart, for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of different ways to fail. Grass getting cut over here. The different utilities, different tenants, making sure
Yep.
everything's. I feel the pain because
Totally.
things can catch up, and you got to be able to deploy anybody anywhere at any given time. So,
Totally.
but that's we signed up for it.
Yeah.
Um,
And about the tech stack, so you must use Appfolio for our
yeah,
property management software, and you can do a lot of functionality in there. We use Trello for our project management to keep all of our team aligned on the priorities. Um, we use Google Drive for a lot of our data storage, and obviously we use a ton of AI like ChatGPT and Claude as well. Um, that's, I mean, that's for the most part does probably 80% of a lot of our tech stack.
yeah, and that's good enough. I mean, that's institutional tech stack on its own. We use Slack for internal communications with
Yeah,
across the team members. Very familiar with Trello. And Appfolio, you can certainly set it up for automations and Claude Cowork. I mean, that's it can do many jobs on its own. Just got to
yeah,
go through the brain damage of getting it set up and all the iterations.
Yeah.
So very cool. What does your operation look like moving forward? What are the goals?
The goals is to add probably 100 to 150 units this year, maybe 200 units next year. And more or less, it's just to continuously optimize. So get rid of the dogs, keep the good ones, and then eventually create a property management company that is self-sustaining. Because right now, it very much requires a lot of time and effort from me and my partner. So we want to get to the point where we have enough systems and people in place where we can focus on more or less the growth activities and less so being stuck in the day-to-day of managing a large property management organization.
Yeah, yeah. I think that just fee management, it's like 5,000 doors is like the where you can almost call it a business without you being directly in the grind. So it's a
Right.
lot more doors. If you own it, then all the cash flow is yours if you own the properties outright. But like you had mentioned, and then you get into, I mean, you've got capital constraints too. It's especially if you're wanting to do it alone. It's just getting into, you're getting creative finance and trying to find those deals where the owners are even willing to do seller carrybacks or this or that. So it's very much it's a tough game either way you go about it. Either you're bringing on partners, bringing on LPs, syndicating, trying to do it on your own. Then you're constantly getting pulled in different directions. But it's a long game, like you had mentioned too. What has been some other creative ways that you all have taken down properties?
Um, we've done seller finance notes, right? So the seller will carry a second note, typically outside of the transaction via a promissory note or something of that nature, and we'll utilize that as down payment money for the property. That's been an effective strategy. Obviously, 1031s have been a pretty good strategy as well. We utilize some 1031s to trade up into some larger properties. Um, Utilizing lines of credit on one property to buy another property. We've done a commercial lines of credit on property as well to purchase other property. So those are some ways we've bought properties, but typically it's been joint venture or syndication
Yeah,
with
yeah,
with with,
and
uh, with, with partners.
yeah, and that's where the structure up front matters the most because again, 2 years down the road or however long it takes to get them renovated and restabilized, increase the rents. Now you're finally to your 2 year mark, and then you get your fee splits, your where everyone gets paid. So that's where it's did you structure it right on the onset, and did you give away too much equity on the onset? Because you're still building up your track record. That has to happen, but at the same time, you're giving up time for money too. Um,
Yeah,
what would be
I
some?
think to your point, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that like your first couple deals, a lot of times you're building up a track record and it's not really about making you money. It's more about building your reputation and making your investors money. Because if you do good in your first couple ones, they'll come and keep investing time and time and time again. I mean, some of my most prominent investors are repeat investors and word of mouth investors, right?
Yeah,
So that's been my experience at least.
yeah, yep. I totally agree. What has been some learning lessons that you've learned along the way that if you knew then what you know now, things would be a little different?
I think everybody probably says this, but not getting shiny object syndrome and staying in your lane. I think like we took on some other strategies outside of multifamily investing that probably didn't work out as well as we would have liked. And I think if we just stuck with multifamily, we'd be in a way stronger position as of today. So I think that's probably would be my piece of advice to myself.
Yeah, it's just hard because if you're looking at only multifamily and there's no viable deals, and
Yeah,
you're doing even if you're doing direct
totally.
marketing campaigns and there's nothing coming back,
Hmm.
it's you have to keep on. Your team wants to grow,
Yep.
so it's like you're forcing the company to grow. So then you start looking at, all right, what are some other verticals here? What else can we get
Yep.
into? What else can we create value at? And it's just, I mean,
Hmm.
you create a platform. It's easy to create just a multifamily platform, but I can't say it's easy because you have to have deals that are worth making it a platform. Whether it's, I mean, you can go into fee management, but fee management is also, I mean, is it worth your effort, energy, and time to go in for a little sliver and you have no ownership? You can increase the performance of the property, you can make it worth more. You know what you can do, but if you don't have any ownership, then really it's all for nothing. Or do you create kind of an ownership structure with the owners?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's a long game, right? Like we don't get paid to 2, 3, 4 years down the road, but in the meantime, you and I got to eat, right?
Right.
So I think that was kind of the thought process with changing in some of these verticals is to create some active income now, which didn't work out as well as I would have hoped. So,
Yeah. What was that? Just so we know, like what was the other vertical that you went into?
flips. I would say I
Flips.
went a couple flips and they just didn't work out as well as I would have hoped. And if I just stuck with multis, I would be in a way stronger position for sure.
Did you just buy it wrong? Was it you didn't know what you didn't know and got in much heavier than you originally thought on renovations?
I think it was all of that combined with the market shifting at the time when I started flipping as well, right? So right now it's probably more of a buyer's market than a seller's market. And
Yeah.
when I got into flipping, it was more of a seller's market.
Yeah, because we bought small deals, renovated them, and just leased them up. Whether it's single family houses, duplexes, quads. I mean, we truly never really sold anything, but it was kind
Yeah,
of
I
same.
think we got into singles and condos. If we stuck with multis, to your point, there's multiple exit strategies, right?
Yeah, yeah. Condos, I have not tapped into anything like that, but I mean, I could see where you could buy it right, and then the market will pay for a condo. Somebody out there, but what are some other learning lessons?
Um, some other learning lessons I would say is, you really have to, at a certain level, you really have to start treating this like a business and less so a hobby. And you really have to have SOPs in place, systems in place. You really have to proactively manage accounts payable, accounts receivable. It, and it, you have to actually, sorry, let me, you can fix this, right? Let me just think how I want to phrase this. Um, hmm.
Systematize all of the do's and don'ts.
Yes, yeah. So I think the main takeaway is you really have to systematize a lot of your systems and your processes and not treat it like a hobby. When I first got into this, everything was living in my head, right? And you can do that to a certain extent. But when you get to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units and you have multiple active projects, you really have to get it out of your head and you really have to create systems and processes where your team can run with it, right? And it took me a couple years to figure that out and get my team on the same page, so it really didn't rely on me as being the bottleneck for everything.
Yeah. What asset classes are you all predominantly managing? Is it C, B, A, D?
It's typically C and B.
Yeah.
We
Workforce
typically,
housing.
yeah, we typically play in a cap rate of, probably 7 to 10.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you got to go through the brain damage every month of collections and payment plans and
Pretty
same
much.
same characters paying at the end of the month and just
Yep.
they make sure they don't have no deposit on hand if they just skip out and they're done. It's easy to say, yeah, but we can evict them, this and that, but you're going through all of the motions of eviction, 2 months to go through the court process. They finally get out. Now you got to renovate the unit, release it up. And you could be 5 or 6 months of just downtime, and it's just you just got to work. We've been using Flex Pay out of Appfolio quite a bit to
Okay.
get them converted over, and that's been working out pretty well for us for those tenants that choose to pay at the end of the month instead of on time. Um, but I totally resonate with the asset class that you're in, and that's where we go towards where the deals are at. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's where typically the deals are at that we can make the properties better.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I can definitely relate with everything you're saying, right? A lot of times it's easier to create a win-win for everybody than to fight the tenant, right? It costs you more money in the long run with vacancy, evictions, and things like that. So
Yeah,
I'll have to look into that flex pay. It sounds like a really good
yeah.
add-on.
That's the Appfolio too. So that's
Okay.
it's right in the system. It's just integrates right in. It's pretty good since we started using it. But
Nice.
what would be some nuggets that you would give to the listeners, the beginning real estate investors,
Hmm.
maybe the LPs that are out there listening? What are some
Sure.
takeaways that you'd give to them?
I would definitely say that, the power's in the debt, right? The most important line item on every real estate deal is the debt. It's the most expensive line item. So organizing that correctly upfront with the project is incredibly important, right? And what I mean by that is, making sure the term of the loan is long enough to support the stabilization plan and maybe have it a couple extra years just in case if things don't go according to plan. Ensure that there's construction money in there to get you over humps, to ensure there's interest only periods. Making sure the debt aligns with the business plan, I think, is incredibly important. And I think a lot of people got in that scenario where, they signed up for these multifamily assets where there was a deep value add plan, and the debt was only a couple years long, right? So, I think understanding that up front would probably save you a lot of heartache.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. Every debt has a purpose, whether it's bridge or long term. Just matching that up with the business
Hmm.
plan. You don't want to put long term debt on something that you're doing a value add strategy on. So it's just learning the ropes, and then of course getting a mentor like you had gotten. A lot of people do get, so you don't have to learn the hard way. Very cool. If
Exactly.
somebody wants to reach out to you, learn more about yourself, learn more about your company, possibly invest with you guys, how can they get a hold of you?
So they can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Andrew Freed, um, or Investor Freed on Instagram. Definitely feel free to reach out. That I'm always happy to connect with other investors and talk about the power of real estate investing. It's really helped me achieve a lot of my dreams, and I'm confident can help other people do it as well.
Cool. Awesome. Andrew, definitely appreciate your time. Look forward to following you. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.